Thank you, Thomas. It's really make my life very difficult today. It's a stunning performance, especially, can you hear me? Yes, it works, okay. It's really stunning what you did because maybe you deprived this music of all the excesses that we sometimes hear in performance, and maybe selected an interpretation where the fluidity, the cantabile, and maybe certain shadows also are, more vivid in your performance than in others in some ways. So I really appreciate that because it's enlightening. It brings something fresh to this music. Perhaps in the last movement sometimes, that depends a lot on the piano, and I know everybody was used to the Shigeru Kawai. Now we switched, so maybe there is a change also in that, and you didn't have a chance to try, but some of the notes in the upper register, especially the chords, could have had a little bit more ring, so that we can test a little bit in the process. It's wonderful that you have this Berenreiter edition that seems to follow, not because they want you to buy multiple volumes, publishers are very smart at doing that, but that's not the reason. I think it's because he ends, the publisher here decided to end with the third sonata, and there are even fragments of these, maybe the early fragments of the second sonata, and also not so many people know that there are indeed 13 sonatas by Scriabin, except that the first 3 examples he decided not to publish, and here we have the first and third samples. I can't remember, I think the third may have been already an exercise at the Moscow Conservatory. The first one, it was his ideal sonata fantasie, which he realizes in the actual published second sonata, but that was also in the same key, right, of G sharp minor, if you looked it up. And of course, it's a very different example, but the fellow was only 13 years old, can you imagine? Yeah. And then there is a C sharp minor, pre-published, non-published second sonata that unfortunately he didn't finish. And the third sonata in E flat minor, it's not fully realized in some ways, and he uses I think the first movement, I can't remember now, in the Allegro Appassionato Opus 4, so it's interesting to compare what he did with that. But I guess that all of these sonatas up to the third have something in common. Could you tell me what it might be? Well, the second and fourth sonata are in 2 movements. He explores these possibilities. I think the E flat early sonata not published is in 3 movements, but the first sonata is in 4 movements, like the third sonata. But they all have in common, I think, the minor key. They're all in minor keys. A lot of the first period of Scriabin, see, there is a reason why this publication ends with the third sonata, is basically the last piano piece, what is it, Opus 23 as far as I remember, and then there are these Opus 27, there is the Fantasy Opus 28, and then his second symphony, Opus 29. That ends really the first creative period of Scriabin. The fourth sonata being the one that changes towards the light, so towards major keys. More major keys appear, and they will, the minor keys almost disappear after the third symphony into the third style, and it becomes almost nearly major keys. This conquering this entire philosophy of his life towards light, towards the ambition of happiness, into a shadowy last period, also subdivided in different parts, 3 parts, which is the 4th period, incomplete because Mysterium never saw the light of the day, to play a pun on that. So just another element of this that you can notice, unlike the second period with the fourth sonata, the fifth belonging already to the third period, so other piano pieces, a lot of these piano sonatas are preceded by small size compositions. This, especially in the first period, I think that he was very enthusiastic about the music of Grieg and Chopin, especially the miniatures, and was looking up at Franck, Brahms, Liszt, and even Wagner for, larger compositions. But this is it's kind of a great experiment, the sonata form in two movements. Great contrast, very lyrical, very dreamy in the first movement, and quite well organized for the second movement with a very different dramatic character. Anyway, all of these they generally begin, even the third sonata, right, in F sharp minor, begins already with the key. This begins with the key. The fourth sonata does not, so a differentiation with the second period is in fact starting to wait for the arrival of the key, of the major key, or the important key anyway. And then little by little he will lose the sharps and the flats he puts in the beginning towards the other sonatas. He will completely become almost like a contemporary composer where we don't have to specify. So it's very difficult to talk about the music of Scriabin without hinting a little bit about the special world that he created for himself by reading tomes of philosophy, and he read Kant, and he was very interested in many different philosophers, had anthologies, and he created from the 2 years after the fourth sonata, he created a life of his own in a way by even leaving his wife and living a little bit in solitude and developing all his theories and approaching harmony in a very meticulous way. So he would write these small miniatures. If you look at his production, there are all these miniatures that are almost as though you were working on a small painting, very, very small, to study all the details that would then be amplified in a larger composition. So all the small pieces precede a sonata and often work out certain harmonic progressions in the same way. He was very meticulous in his work. And in this piece, I think one thing we talked about the two different opposite characters almost between the movements, but I would also try to identify the seeds of the melodic character. We have, as you find in the third sonata, maybe even in the first sonata, I can't remember, but you have an anacrusis. He was very fond of beginnings with anacrusis. In fact, the first sonata begins with the right hand being the downbeat. In the second sonata, there is a anacrusis, the third sonata, and the fourth, right? So you have all these anacrusis. But then we have this also anacrusis with the what can you make about this? It sets the G sharp minor, of course, only because the pedal is there, we hear the fundamental note, which is the G sharp. Otherwise, it would be some sort of strange 6/4 chord without the third, right? So the pedal, though, helps us with the, so we have a full, but still we are missing the third, which comes delayed as here. So the third should be a bit more important and when it arrives. And also, what is the difference between ta-ra-ra-ram, ta-ra-ra-ra? This melody, it's very short, it's a motif. It comes back. I don't know if it's a little bit what he uses in other pieces, the horn calls, which of course it's, in its essence, it's not only a horn call, because it will be found in different registers that are not often associated with the horn, a little higher, right? But can you make a small difference, especially when you play the melody? I don't feel this as this could be without the the call. In other words, you could do there, and then if nothing happens, you could move on to right? So we have to find some call or something a little bit different to specify that that's a little bit different in texture from what's happening. It's not unlike what you learned from Chopin. And then you have that's a different texture, you know. Meanwhile, as this descending line continues, we continue to feel the chorale, and we have to catch up, right? This is quite similar. While this is happening, we still have the color, a mixture of G sharp minor with that, or anyway. So could you try? Just let's begin first from what's easy, which is this. From there. So this is a maybe find a way, maybe more finger to show the staccato. It's very difficult, but this is languid and very. This one a little bit less, and then the accent. Can you change the pedal though, because he writes very clearly. See, you could have same pedal, but he writes. Change here. So he doesn't follow, I think, the harmony and this, but he follows the hemiola or pseudo-hemiola. You have another thing that happens in the music of Scriabin. These are not triplets, but a lot of the music of Scriabin, if you start noticing, it's written in 3/4 and in 6/8 and in 9/8. So when you see 2/4, you start looking at the textures, and you see triplets. So it kind of defeats the purpose. It's always ternary, the sense, or in 3 anyway. So even the left hand is so it goes by the bass. And it highlights, therefore, something that is not designed to show the downbeat in a way, but almost like the old romantic fashion of starting the left hand a little before the right hand, right? So again. This one can actually, so it's washed out when it reaches this, and the horn call. So I would use one pedal for that, as written, really change, and then, and then you have one pedal there. So minimum use of pedal, try. Can you appreciate even more the 10th? Don't come so quickly with. Then you have to decide, should be with the diminuendo. I think the first horn call is louder, and therefore this. It's an echo of. It becomes more sensual in some ways, or more expressive too. Try. Good. And this one is quite the same. So if you do. I would reserve really another type of pianissimo for this. I know it's D sharp minor, but think of the third example of the E flat minor sonata, a reminder of that key. That's a more luminous key. Everything that is a dominant seventh. And again, you see that it begins to, okay, scholars have basically worked so hard to try to understand the later Scriabin based on the seeds found in the early Scriabin. I give you an example, the mystic chord. I look at Scriabin fourth sonata, you have the second chord it has the fourth sound that belonged already to Prometheus. So, I mean, they all went back, but here it's really interesting. It's already playing with lights and shadows. So whenever you go to the major, I think, something opens, and it's this idea that you will find later in the fourth sonata. It is the far, far away star. You know the story of the little poem that was, that performers were not supposed to know about, according to Scriabin, but it was found in a biography. And anyway, so this idea of longing for happiness, in other words, right? So the major key. Now, let's return to this in a moment, and let's switch back to the beginning. Let's see if we can trace the seeds of this horn call or whatever. From the very opening. Do you think it's more or less than your... And then, is it more or less this? Can there be more? Okay, try. Then what about starting with the... to be undisturbed, almost like the same color of, and then you go for, you can slow down, because with the same pedal, he writes ritardando, very smart, he was a pianist. When you have a longer pedal starting from bass, it takes a little longer to do a diminuendo. So you can take time. Courage without the left pedal, and this piano is so nasal in some ways. Let's see if sorry. It's much richer sound. Try. Yes. Touch barely. Yes, and this one you can more, just land on the key with a more of, yeah, can you try? Yes, you have a, it's richer, it's very hard otherwise to held the horn alone. Good, one more time, let's get used to that. Softer this one. Now even soft. Now a little forward. More. I understand you don't want to go to the excess of what people do here. They play fortissimo, basically. And you wonder, then you read and it says mezzo forte. So, of course, it's an interpretation. Mezzo forte is what, right? But I think needs more... Try to, instead of doing the full crescendo as he writes, wait for this. For the highly dissonant... What is this? It's the beginning of what he will employ later, which is the typical French augmented sixth. And often, sometimes in a variant, this is for minor, but sometimes for major he uses not D, A flat, C, D, F sharp. He uses A flat, C, E, F sharp, because this characterizes, the relationships in his keys are also based on jumps of tritons from key to key and major thirds, which are the intervals of the augmented French sixth. You have major third, but you also have the triton. So that, I think, is quite important to show really the crescendo through the harmony as well, not only as it's written, but to identify those more interesting chords. And maybe a more dramatic silence. Could you try from the last? Remember the inner voice 2 and 3 in the right hand? More juice out of the chord. Ah, yes. It's also there. It's hard, right? It's really hard because we have the melody is really important. This beautiful motif, but we good. It's important because this is the modulation to the major. Actually, in fact, you have, not unlike Debussy that does the chord streaming. In Pelléas, you have, and you have here the same thing, which is, except he doesn't use the seventh. So, but that's the idea, a chord stream. Good, very nice. So remember, 2 and 3 in the right hand, and the inner voices for the right hand, very important. Okay, let's do now this. What I would do, I know that there is a T. So this music has a lot of long notes and short, but it still resolves in G sharp minor. I would take a little time, so you know that, and then move it, because this way the arrival is a little bit perceived as such by making it longer. If you arrive and you go, we don't have the psychological timing to understand that there is a motif now and it's not part of the melody. Try. So sort of accelerate a little bit the long notes, like a. Change. More light now already. Light. Good. Could this change if he had written the word fantastic or something? One of these French, words that he uses. Fantastique. If you again stretch the long note, kick the dotted note. So the dot has a very rhetorical meaning here, but a bit more with fantasy. Chopin. Right? And again, it's similar, but not. It's got deviations, and is thinking about how to slowly bring the melody up. You see, so I forget, there was a wonderful movie, American, it was the name of the, gosh, I forget, where there is a beautiful scene of a plastic bag that flies, and the wind carries the plastic. It's one of the most poetic moments. American Beauty, I forget what it's called anyway, this movie, but anyway, there is a scene where even a plastic, does anybody know? American Beauty, right? So there is this plastic bag that is an infinitely uninteresting object. And it's so beautiful the way it was filmed. It's almost an art form in itself to watch the flight of a plastic bag. So this is better than a plastic bag, but can you imagine the... And I expected, sometimes you should conclude in B major. Can you try? Make a conclusion in B major. And you do it twice, and the third time, I want you to actually experience what happens. When he goes, because you are too used to it, and you have to create the surprise. So you train yourself to go to a regular cadence, 5-1, and then you'll find that 5-6 is a bit fresher in your ear now. Try. Let's do it twice. Beautiful. Again. Now don't raise the finger so much. Just more gestures like this with the right hand. Try. Good. And now let's do Scriabin. Still rubato, maybe, right? Be more like the distant star here, too. Make the candy, the unwrapping of the candy slow enough that you can finally, with passion, taste it, okay? So that's the idea. The rubato can be a bit freer, It's amazing. Sometimes he gives us the green light to do something, but we are a bit more moderate in our approach. I love that you didn't go, the second time is B major, but with, of course, the usual additive. It could be, an unresolved appoggiatura, but it's actually it's another 5 anyway. So that's the idea, that you rediscover the meaning of this. And also this rediscovering the E sharp. It does. Don't move until your ear perceives the... It should perceive the dominant of B major in that E, like the 7th. So I don't perceive it until... Love that you brought that out. Let's do it again from... There you go. Now in tempo, then... That's right, move the triplets. A bit more with pathos, this. often Russian music begins the statement with more sound. And Lorin, it would be like, you know, much more intense, you know. Try. Because it resolves. Now, no, the first note. In diminuendo. More rhetoric, yeah? This is a variant of what we had before with more rubato. Good. Good. Now imagine a glissando here. Fine. It's too direct. Here, each tone a little higher. Careful, you play diminuendo, not yet. Go to the fourth note. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this one doesn't have it. Then it starts, the engine moves. It needs more of that. Even if you give the bass, but give a little E. I would take time and like a singer, and so on. Do again from this I would staccato with pedal. Sort of. It travels more. Depending on the piano, though, but you can try to liberate the gesture more, yes. Gorgeous, really, no problem at all. I would maybe recommend after you when you make this very rhetoric, like then accelerate, and then calmer this, and then this part again, moving again. You know, basically when there are long notes, you start moving with the fantasy. That's where the fantasy sonata begins, with more of this, the flight, which we find then in the dance-like of the second movement of the fourth sonata and in other places in his music. But this one is so melodic. Yeah, let's do it one more time from. Take your time here. Diminuendo. first showing almost what happens in the beginning. 2 accents. He writes a grace note and arpeggiated chord. The grace note has an accent, the top note of the arpeggiated chord has an accent. How interesting. It's a reminder to the... And the second time, no, just because it's conclusive. So it has a different meaning. Then this part is quite the same in some ways. So play just ta-dam. I would make more a big deal of the novelty here instead of we have. Sounds like Liszt, one of the Année de Pèlerinage. Sometimes to play with the staccato with less pedal. And then little by little becomes pedaled again. I would try. I know it's possible in romantic music, late romantic music, to use pedal on staccatos too. But because the harmony varies, there's a passing note there. This is possible here. At least the beginning maybe somewhere in there without pedal. Maybe not all, but I would try to show a little bit the I don't know, the militaresque approach. These are very different triplets from the one he used before. So I think it's great character differentiation. Very, very welcome actually after. Huh? Can you try once from maybe a... You could start from the first note, by the way. This, and so melody from the first note. I know there is a crescendo, but it's hard after a fortissimo to hear the first note. So after you finish your last chord, it's less of a crescendo and more like of a character differentiation. So it's important to hear the beginning. Try from maybe there. Now this is the same key of Sposalizio, G major in, so when you reach this moment, I think have a little moment reminiscent of these studies and his, great love for the romantic master, yeah? So this is very good. You could attempt to do, and then when you play, to clean the pedal a little bit, so you use more pedal in the, in that part. So you have a big difference, yeah. Clean, clean. Now longer pedal. 3, 1. Half pedal on those chromatic changes. Longer pedal. Yeah. Go a little wilder. From here, more. There's a sorry, feeling the connection with your body. Don't just use the arm alone. That right? Papa. Even that note was a bit too like. You pick on the note a little too quickly with the fingers. See? Try body. Yes. Wait time? Yes, time, right before the small excerpt. Now slower. Ti, ta, ta, ta. So yeah, don't play them all the same, in other words. Some can be ti, po, 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 ni, po, 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 maybe a ti, to, to, maybe this one. So shape these melodies with great freedom and always hearing the dynamic inherent to every melodic pattern. Yeah? Let's do one more time from maybe from here. Good. Ta, pa, pa. Something about ti, ti, do, in diminuendo. Otherwise you hear ti, ti, no, ti, ti, no, ti, ti, and another accentuation. Yeah. So something about the syllable of this poem has closed this a little bit. Yeah. Try to. No, but you're doing. I really see it physically. You go. And unite this with one arm. I would play two notes as a group. Then or think of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 with a 4 diminuendo. Try. Yes, that's so much better. Yeah. So if you're very keen at listening to those more, less, more, so you can. Whatever. Yeah. So very keen at looking at these tiny. If there is a diminuendo, but there is a leap, this will be again a little higher, and then resolution, especially going to minor. Yeah, so you become very sensitive to, you almost have like what they show in the movies. That, when they see if you are lying, they put this instrument that, right, is supposed to register. They ask you a question, and then you see the heartbeat or whatever. So that it becomes like that, you know. It's so incredibly sensitive to everything that you are saying. And this is speech, basically, you know, a form of speech. This is all quite similar. It was very beautiful what you did. So mainly, I would really, for the second movement, I would let's just try to identify only what is a moment of climax, where I think is where the melody appears. So when you play maybe this, you know, if you give equally, you're going to get invariably more left hand. So in this, so then whatever the notes are, you see, it's like a fog there. Can you try from? Yes, it's much better. Another thing, first it's not meant as contrapoint, but the seventh. So show. That's why I think it's not a it's a. So I think the G relates to the F in the way the G in the bass relates to the F. First is melodic, and when the F arrives, it becomes harmonic. And the group begins, so the theme begins. You can think of a theme 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But you can think of 1, 2, 1, 2, da da dum da dum. In a way, if you want to show the harmonic intensity, and try. Ti, fa, mi, re, mi. Fa, mi, ra, da, da, ram, ba, da. And by the way, this will give you a sweeping gesture that can allow the dot to be longer. And this doesn't have to be by no means so fast, but because you took time in the dot, it's more rhetoric. Yeah, try. Yes, and out of all this business of all these notes, try to only show the near the end, and you keep the others a little bit quiet, basically. Near the bass, this, then it's not disturbing, you know, because otherwise if you get the first 3 or 4 notes near the bass, they will eat up all the other notes, and then we can't hear anything, then we have to force. Yeah? Now, there you go. Beautiful, beautiful, yeah. I'm sorry that we don't really have the time to go through this movement. I mean, it was already so very beautiful. I just wanted to put that, the instrument of truth, to show how you can be even more extra sensitive to. This is music that, of course, you know his immense love for colors and keys that have a lot of sharps. When you have F sharp major is a blue color. We learned then that from the score of Prometheus, right? That it's at the bottom of the circle of fifth where it shows all these colors, and it's hard for us to make any sense because what is it called? Synesthesia, the ability to relate sound to color. But obviously, in his mind, this composer had a plan. You know, he wanted all of us to go to India and to purge humankind into a new rebirth through the listening of his symphonic works. You know, the first 2 symphonies, the 3rd symphonies, and all the way to the Poem of Fire. Anyway, so I think it's quite an incredible ending with Mysterium. quite an incredible plan, not like the Ring of Wagner in some ways. No, that's why it had to be in Bayreuth. Everybody had to go like a pilgrimage to, to really be purified in the music of this composer. That's quite, I think that Scriabin really believed in the possibilities that music had to better our society and our world. This is not so distant from the philosophy of Beethoven, which was part of the German philosophy, was also something Beethoven subscribed to. And the Ninth Symphony is the example of, with Hegel and brotherhood and through music. So there was something, in the air already. Yeah, good, beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you.